That's the bad guy.
We look for a new heaven and earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. Bring me to the river Jordan. Look, as a man thinks, then so is he. Prime examples led me to the terms of what I see. Look at me, kicking back, reflecting in the cloud, wailing in my tears, and so much so that I could drown. The class clown, first in any smoke that's going down. My father told me, nigga, you're hard-headed. I know now. Keep me, Lord, cause I feel that I cannot continue. And I've carried scars from watching just what all my friends do. Talk about this shit in all my music, cause it mean a lot. 5 years, fed time, it flew by, didn't seem a lot. Ever had time stolen from you and couldn't see a clock? But danger made us cautious, so we went to go retrieve a Glock. Moved me from a hood, but I'm still stuck with all the memories. Plus I ain't escaped the generation of my enemies. Please expose the hand of all these niggas that pretend to be, and raise your right hand with show glass if you feeling me. Take me to the other side of the river Jordan, cause here we celebrate coming home, but when we scoring, bring me to a land that's plenteous in milk and honey, where niggas don't obsess about hitting licks and loving money. Shit, let us see a place where death will lose its vicious sting, so we don't see our loved ones in the vision of a dream. Amen. Let us see the day when we kings and we running government, cause babies have no fathers in this land, nobody loving them. Woke up in the night, I'm wondering if this gon' carry on, but answering myself that life's elite and it's a marathon. I dream for better days, but then my dreams, they go away, cause if they had the capability, then I'll go cold today. Help us, Lord, hear a man's cry and hear his prayer, cause if we crashed and burned this wicked world, they wouldn't care. We taught that paradise is a place you go when you die, but I'm trying to experience paradise while I live. Take me to the other side of Jordan, let my sins run down as I cross. Bring me to a place that's beautiful, and I can raise my tribe and be saved from the perils of danger. Praise the Lord. Let us make it to the other side. And here, well done, my servant. Yeah.
Vinyl genius. Wish I had Keep Sweat in the background, cause I'ma sweat on this one. I discern you remember that night in McCullough Park. Spoke to you, Lord, show me your face, show me who you are. I can endure the pain, trust. Look at all these scars, even pops withering away. I pour all my heart. Moms can't deal with me cause I chose all the wrong instead of right. Just wanna vibe, so have you heard of me? You open my eyes and I need surgery. I make me sick cause I felt you all the way. Was never atheist. These pages exit Jesus, I had to exit Jesus. Black men in America, yeah, you best believe it. Sounded hella Greekish, so when I saw your burnt feet, I could imagine Peter's. Chanel braided this woolly hair with melanated fingers. Gotta escape the preachers, find the ancient teachers. Endow me, please, with wisdom, Lord, from the gated kingdom. The one and only Yahawashi, yes, you gave me freedom. I'm on my exegesis. Every page I flip, eyes got smoke, tear to a drip. Lord, I'm on, thug to a prince. What am I holding? Who found me here when I was broke? Every page I flip, eyes got smoke, tear to a drip. Lord, I'm open, thug to a prince. What am I holding? Who found me here when I was broke? Yeah, salvation in Matthew 24. Swing chariot, swing low. Spreading light through the world on a couple primos. On my exegesis, niggas, I ain't Negro. I'm your chosen, felt it back and I'm eating cheese flow. Turn the mic up, turn they hype up, let the people go. Cause know this gospel here reveals y'all evils. Threw off that rock away clear, no fooling me, oh how about they know us? They hit us and choked us from the life we own once. So I spit like locusts, cause when you tied them ropes up and you had your hopes up, Yahweh looked down on us. Our power, that gold dust, your tower X'd in old dust. Like the ancient Egypt, can't you see your paraplegic heresies and fantasies? HBO, that canopy. And the ironic thing, nigga, I still can't believe I still can't believe exegesis. Every page I flip, eyes got slow, tear to a drip. Lord, I'm on, thug to a prince. What am I holding? Who found me here when I was broke? Every page I flip, eyes got slow, tear to a drip. Lord, I'm on, thug to a prince. What am I holding? Who found me here when I was broke? Every page I flip, eyes got slow, tear to a drip. Lord, I'm on, thug to a prince. What am I holding? Who found me here when I was broke? Every page I flip, eyes got slow, tear to a drip. Lord, I'm on, thug to a prince. What am I holding? Who found me here when I was broke?
Turn my failures to lessons, losing ain't an option, waiting on my blessings. Turn my failures to lessons, losing ain't an option, waiting on my blessings. I'm crying out, can't hold it in, gotta stay the course, we supposed to win. Done seen it all, it's time to prosper, elevate, it's time to prosper. The world at your neck like a violin. Instruments of cruelty gon' be their end. Satan gon' knock, but don't let him in. We born in a battle that'll never cease. I believe, I believe, I believe. I believe, I believe, I believe. We ghetto dreaming projects full of broken hearts. Picking up the pieces, this is just a start. Somewhere there's a flower trying to bloom out the concrete. I left a trail full of dry petals, trying to spark the mind and not the barrel. If I can't smell, I got my light blush. Things of the world don't entice us. If she loyal, God-fearing, then you wife her. We the chosen, you can't sign her. World for the meek, this is all us. Earth having labor pains, soon it's a due date. Yeah. Earth having labor pains, soon it's a due date. Yeah.
Ghetto gospel. Got my man GA. Yo, it's been a long journey, brother. From the ghetto to the beautiful meadows.
Othello on the
Dive into the real history, find devout respect. Look into the documentaries concerning Malcolm X. Liberation, freedom bell rings from these hell scenes. When I get to talking about a change, it's like I sell dreams. Pop the roof inside of the Benz while I ride around. Study opposition, even when it seems it's dying down. Split moment, violence raining men, families crying out. I just need the truth to help determine what the lie's about. People do a slew of dirt, then live their lives hiding out. Typically your pride is what you judged and what you die about. I can only show by my example and what's true to me. Laughing in the face while listening, what they gon' do to me. Every day the sun shine on me, I could breathe again. My purpose pulls me into a place I gotta leave again. Long phone calls, hopefully my brothers lock it down. Music is a talent, when they hear you, then you stop the crowd. Fly high, even though the arrow shot to knock you down. Then you teach your children to be pure but still pop a style. Prayer to the heavens that the oppression perish, while the people in my circle gifted love then they cherish. And the love is apparent, envy never had an open door. When you take the ups with the downs, well then you know the score. May obtain some horses and acres, but you know the poor. A sweet name is in your work and what the people know you for. When you make provision for yourself, then you showing more. I've had to take the low, humble times on the coldest floors. Minor setbacks for real unspoken victories. To live for all the fellas, see the things that they ain't get to see. I could write a book, I tell you pack your bag and tread along. Cause life is just a path and you can't truly bring your debt along. Love where you at and be content cause you could lose it all. And if I had the chance to pick my circle, then I'm choosing y'all. Hey look, I can't sound like nobody else but me. My genre is ghetto gospel. The truth is I came from the dark to the light. What they say? I was once lost, but now I'm found. And it's a different kind of feeling. You can't rock to my music if you ain't got gratitude. Shit, I'm leaving my blueprint here. There's too many bad examples. They turn the greatest artists into weaponizers, promoting death culture. Shit, we gonna give life in this music. We're gonna talk about overcoming. Cause one thing we've proven is we can do the impossible. You should wash your hands from the street cause you ain't sleeping right. We went to them schools and them people, shit they ain't teach us right. They taught us the history of Lincoln, but ignored the plight. Now we in the air with the message, catching flight to flight. Shot spotters, they detect the sound of when a slug fly. Could you see the pain when you staring into a thug's eye? This is ghetto gospel in heaven, I heard the thugs cry. This is ghetto gospel in heaven, I heard the thugs cry. Heaven heard the thugs cry. Heaven heard the thugs cry. This is ghetto gospel, and heaven heard the thugs cry.
My remedy, Gabaryam lock. Man of faith. If you woke up this morning and that's a victory, being of this world ain't did shit for me. Cause that's his story, not my history. Seeking the Father to get a sense of me. Got my mind on the kingdom, I see it vividly. Better guard your mind, protect your energy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Spirit of life got us stood on our feet. Don't be deceived, they got a heart full of deceit. We daily oppressed, so we mourn and we weep. Just a messenger, Yahweh is God in my speech. We thankful just to make it through the weekend. An honorable man, it's not in season. Demands of the world got us drowning in the deep end. Hear the good news, salvation close. No time to boast, gotta be humble in hope. Even the devil shake and tremble, knowing this time is short. Make sure that my election is sure, and every nation go bow with their heads to the floor. Ain't no time for setbacks, stay covered in these laws. If you woke up this morning and that's a victory, being of this world ain't did shit for me. Cause that's his story, not my history. Seeking the Father to get a sense of me. Got my mind on the kingdom, I see it vividly. Better guard your mind, protect your energy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. You didn't lose that fight, you got the victory. You taught me to love myself inwardly. My heart stopped, that was a C-section delivery. My memories of you, yeah, I got galleries. Your last days, cherish every moment. Every spirit gotta leave and pass over. No more crooked doctors and cold shoulders. Overcome this world, physician with lies. Toss that dirt on you, give me the reason to try. Yahweh give you wings now, teach me to fly. I can't forget that last tear coming down your eyes. This body just a shell, it's what's dwelling inside. One day at a time, I'ma take it with strides. If you woke up this morning and that's a victory, being of this world ain't did shit for me. Cause that's his story, not my history. Seeking the Father to get a sense of me. Got my mind on the kingdom, I see it vividly. Better guard your mind, protect your energy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy. Gotta cleave to your word, that's my remedy.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
All right. Shalom, shalom to everyone. Shalom. Shalom to those coming in. Shalom. All of you see the title to the lesson, Crime and Criminals, Part 2. We will be keeping on track of arrest records, jail statistics, who makes up the most crime, who the real criminals are. We're going to be looking at data, and we're going to be reaching and understanding the conclusion of the whole matter about why these things are taking place with this new series that I've entitled Crime and Criminals. We will be going back into this book, certain excerpts that I've read so far. It's called The White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. So what I wanted to do with this lesson, I originally wanted to go into Esau's crimes, but that's going to be a really extensive lesson. And it's definitely going to at least be minimum 2 hour plus class, at least because we need to discuss the things Esau does and not just what he does, but why. And why this narrative of black fatigue and black people this, black people that is so predominantly and prevalently taking the narrative of black people, predominantly that is, again, with this lesson and with the lessons of this particular series moving forward. This is not discluding our Latino and Native American brethren. Once again, I want to make a disclaimer on that, but Esau with the foundational method and methodology of slavery established white at the top of the totem pole and black at the bottom, and everyone else is just in between. So the what I want to say to that is that I'm not discluding the other tribes, but the helm of the conflict is between the head tribe being Judah and Esau himself. So what I want to make clear is that Esau did it this way, so I'm using Esau's methodology and using what he did and what he put in place to bring forth the preceding lessons that will come out of this series. Okay. Khan Mayak Ali, you around Edomites all day. This is definitely going to be something that hits home for a lot of them. Okay. We know the number one scripture that talks about jail statistics, particularly in what would befall the children of Israel for their disobedience. In Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 22. Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 22 says, "But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them stared at holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith restore." Now, this would currently explain and go over what will befall God's people in this current time period that we are now living in. This is future prophecy. Verse 23 says, "Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come?" So who's going to pay attention to this matter, and who's going to take notice of these things taking place and occurring amongst God's people? I'm going to put it in that context before I read this in another translation to kind of give the answer as to why I'm reading this in the KJV first. Verse 24, "Who gave Jacob for his spoil and Israel to the robbers? Did not the Lord against Salat, he against whom we have sinned? For they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law. Therefore he hath poured upon him the fury of his anger and the strength of battle, and it hath set him on fire round about. Yet he knew not, and it burned him, yet he laid it not to heart," which perfectly explains the state that we are now in. We didn't lay it to heart, and this is why we're still currently at the bottom of society. We are still the tail. We are still at the end and at the bottom of every socioeconomic circumstance within America, in all 50 states, no matter what tribe, and particularly no matter where we are. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to read Isaiah 42 and 22. In the NIV and the NLT to make clear who this is talking about. So Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 22 in the NIV, it says, "But this is a people plundered and looted, all of them trapped in pits or hidden away in prisons. They have become plunder, and with no one to rescue them. They have been made to loot with no one to say, send them back." In the NLT, which is even more clear-cutting and precisely to the point, "But his own people have been robbed, plundered, enslaved, imprisoned, and trapped. They are fair game for anyone and have no one to protect them, no one to take them back home." Well, who else could that be talking about? Because we know the people that are over there in the land today are not the original inhabitants of the nation and land of Israel, nor are they the biblical descendants of Jacob through the 12 tribes, but are in fact descendants of the other son that is of our particular enemy's bloodline that we would go to war against from generation to generation. And we are currently at war with them because they've stolen and taken an identity that does not belong to them. So again, the NLT in Isaiah 42 and 22 says, "But his own people have been robbed and plundered, enslaved, imprisoned, and trapped. They are a fair game for anyone and have no one to protect them, no one to take them back home." And of course, we know that Amalek is not the one predominantly behind bars for crimes that they either do not commit or are overrepresented in committing. They do not serve out the sentences as we do. And more importantly, they are not locked up and massively incarcerated as one particular group of people are. So now we go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 23. And we read about the curses. We know verse 15 is the dividing line where if we didn't listen and be obedient unto the Most High, we know everything that would happen, occur, and take place, right? Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 23 says, "And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is underneath thee shall be iron. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust from heaven, and shall come down upon thee until thou be destroyed." Now, verse 23, this is doublefold. Scriptures have a manifold and double-edged meaning to them. This is one of them, because this verse describes a curse of drought and barrenness that would befall the Israelites for disobeying God. The imagery that this scripture is particularly portraying means that the sky would not provide rain, which is, fruitful in this context, and that the ground would become unfit and unproductive for agriculture and growing crops. The heaven of brass represents the withholding of blessings and his response and the Most High's responsiveness, while the iron earth signifies the harsh, unforgiving environment. Now, brass comes from H5178, which is nakashath. It is something that is made of metal. It is a chain. It is a fetter. It can also mean filthy. A fetter is a chain or a manacle used to retain a prisoner, that which is usually placed around the ankle and the shackling of the feet. And of course, again, it says the heaven that is over thee shall be brass. Everything is iron. Everything is hard texture. You can't break or get through it. And the earth beneath thee is iron. This is representing metal and representing confinement, that which is harsh, that which you are confined and imprisoned and enslaved to, which is the jail and prison institutions within America. And of course, these are the curses that would befall God's people. I'm in a short time period about to show all of you evidently who this is talking about and who this is going into. So again, the fetters represent what would hold down people that would be locked and concealed in prisons, jails, and just confined in general. This represents the low status in the state that God's people are currently in. And this helps to identify as an identifying marker who the Lord's people truthfully are. Now, before we get into what I have, I want to read some excerpts from this book. Again, this is called White Fragility: Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. I'm going to start with something I read. They have a saying that racism isn't taught, it's inherent. And then they also say racism isn't inherent because there's nothing genetically coded within DNA that says hate black people, kill them, and destroy everything that they have, but rather it's taught. I'm with the second one saying that it's not inherent, but it is taught. Rhea Williams asks, what's the page number? I'm starting at page 84 at the bottom of the page, if you have this book. She's going over currently, children are much more open in the chapter, The Good and the Bad and the Binary. So she's discussing children and how white children grow up to perceive race and look at people of color. It says, as the claim that children are so much more open, research over the past 2 decades indicates that children are vastly more sophisticated in their awareness of racial hierarchies than most people believe. Even when race is not explicitly discussed, children internalize both implicit and explicit messages about it from their environment. For example, psychology researchers Maria Montero, Delilah de la Franca, and Ricardo Rodriguez tested 283 white children aged 6 to 7 and 9 to 10 years old. The children were asked to allocate money to white and black children, sometimes with the white adult in the room and sometimes with no adult in the room, to see if an adult present influenced their behavior. The researchers found that the younger group discriminated against black children, that's the 6 and 7 year olds, while the older group discriminated against the black children only when no adult was present. So the 9 to 10 year olds were racist when the adults weren't present. The children were racist whether the adults were present or not. This finding is significant because it shows that the older children clearly had racial prejudice and acted on it, but hid it when a white adult was present. Thus, the children showed that they did not become less racially biased with age, but that they had learned to hide their racism in front of adults. Montero and her colleagues found racial hostility in white children as young as 3 years old. That is crazy. That is wild. However, most white parents and teachers believe that children are colorblind. This false belief keeps us from honestly addressing racism with children and exploring with them how racism has helped shape the inequities that they already observe. That's from the age of 3. That is from the age of 3 that they understand racism and are already doing this. All right, moving. That was page 84, moving to page 86. All right. White people will sometimes say, focusing on race is what divides us. Many things that we talk about every day really don't matter, precisely because these topics of conversation don't matter that are easy to talk about. We know race matters a great deal, but for many of the reasons already discussed, we feel the need to deny its importance. Ironically, this denial is the fundamental way in which white people maintain unequal racial power. Many whites see the naming of white racial power as divisive. For them, the problem is not the power inequity itself. The problem is naming the power inequity. This naming breaks the pretense of unity and exposes the reality of racial division. So when you're saying something that's to speak on behalf of white people with racism or prejudice or systemic racism, they will say that that's the problem rather than to not talk about it at all and ignore it as if it's not a problem, when if it wasn't a problem at all, there would be no issue or problem to begin with discussing it. But because you are discussing it and highlighting something that's important that makes them uncomfortable and they feel that is calling them out on behalf of prejudiceness and racism and the systemic racial hierarchy that America has and that's been established for centuries, that's when it becomes a problem and they want to shut down, avoid, get defensive, so on and so forth, to maneuver around the fact that they need to have the conversation in order to address it and talk about it. And continuing, it says, even though participants of color repeatedly state that whites refusal to acknowledge racial difference in power dynamics actually maintains racial inequity, white participants continue to insist that not talking about difference is necessary for unity. Although the participants are purportedly engaged in these discussions to explore differences in racial perspectives and experiences, as soon as these differences appear, many whites react as if there's been a violation. Of course, white norms are violated by naming white power, but unequal power relations cannot be challenged if they are not acknowledged. Refusing to engage in an authentic exploration of racial realities erases and denies alternate racial experiences. If we block out other realities by not discussing them, we can pretend that they don't exist, thereby assuming a shared racial experience. Not talking about race allows us to maintain our sense of ourselves as unique individuals outside of collective socialization and group experience. While it isn't comfortable for most whites to talk about racism, we must do so if we want to challenge rather than to protect racism. To avoid talking about racism can only hold our misinformation in place and prevent us from developing the open and necessary skills and perspectives to challenge the status quo. Now, why am I reading all this? Again, because with what I'm going to bring forth and what I'm going to talk about, it's tiring to hear that black people this, black people that. You know, ICE has been going around nationwide arresting, for the most part, what was their goal and objective, criminals from Latin America. Multiple times they've escaped jail and prisons from their own countries, child molesters, gang members, violent offenders that have escaped the country and have just made it their way into America, so on and so forth. If they want to say that and that's their agenda and goal, then they can say that because that's their agenda and goal. The problem now is that it's gotten out of control to the point where innocent people are being taken and attacked. And of course, the narrative goes illegal migrants, and illegal migrants. But no one takes into the account and the fact that when they came over here, what do you classify the Taino, Arawak, and the indigenous Native and Seminole Indians that were already living over here as? Because an immigrant is one that comes to from a distant in another place, which means that if Esau is the original immigrant, you're able to control the narrative in history and make it look and seem as though you've never been the immigrant at all to begin with, when you've taken, pillaged, raped, robbed, and stolen lands and people that did not belong to you. And also using the Bible to do so, which is even more ludicrous, is not just highly profane and abominable. It's also on behalf of the fact that they do that, and then white people complain that, you know, one argument I hear amongst white people is that whites should date whites should date within their own, and the white woman and the white man need to be together. You shouldn't interracially mix. White people can have that conversation and they can talk about those things, but then they're going to skip over the history where their predecessors and the Spaniards and the colonists, English, French, and everyone else, so on and so forth, Portuguese, Spanish, they forget that they raped all of the native women when they came over here and made a racial hierarchy establishment with whites at the top and everyone else beneath, and used a color coding scale to establish the racial hierarchy that she's also discussing within this book. And it's confusing because when you do this, like they did, and when these things are to be discussed, white people are not able to take the truth and rather get defensive and flee from it, or want to flee from it and not talk about it when we have to discuss these things, because white people and everyone else, so on and so forth, with this melting pot and mixture of nations that America is today, didn't just explode out of nowhere in 2025. We need to understand the past so that we're able to understand the present. So the point of why I say that and why I'm bringing that forth is that what she's discussing is the conversations we have to have. The point of these classes, in this class tonight, along with the previous one, is to really talk about what goes on pertaining to crime, and tonight, as we're going to go into the prison industry and business, and what needs to be discussed and had and talked about pertaining to who the real criminals are. Because the predominant narrative takes place with a spectacle on black people and black men particularly, that we're just violent, we're barbaric, we kill one another, we're no good but for rap music, gang violence, and we're just good at being athletes. And of course, black women, we take the short end of the stick with our women, baby daddies, fathers locked up, no man in the home, kids out in the streets to recreate and reproduce more broken homes, welfare queens, and nobody knows the underlying quiet narrative that's never been talked about how white people for decades have been the ones that have gotten and received most of the government assistance. And rightfully so, because this white predominant led government would support its own people. But you see how we get the end of the stick, and rather than the real facts and matters be discussed, we have to do that here so that we're really able to understand the things that are at play behind the scene. Okay. Something else you guys may have heard of. This is going to go tie into tonight with what I'm going to go into later. This is page 92. It says, copious research attests to the disdain of whites for African Americans, from the school to prison pipeline to mass incarcerations to white flight. For example, on attitude surveys, most whites say they would prefer neighborhoods that are no more than 30% black. And more than half of whites say they would not move into a neighborhood that is 30% black or more. Studies of actual mobility patterns not only confirm these preferences, but also show that the whites downplay them. White flight has been triggered when a formerly white neighborhood reaches 7% black, and in neighborhoods with more than a few black families, white housing demand tends to disappear. That is, the demand disappears unless white people need the housing because of unaffordable home prices in other neighborhoods. In that case, black people are pushed out as gentrification increases. Brooklyn, Harlem, and Oakland and Seattle are prime examples. A 2015 study by the American Sociological Foundation found that at the highest level of segregation, which never really ended, the highest level of segregation is between blacks and whites, the lowest between Asians and whites, and the level of Latino and whites occupies an intermediate position. A majority of whites, in both the expression of their beliefs and the practice of their lives, do not want to integrate with blacks. We see anti-black sentiment in how quickly images of brutality towards black children, let alone black adults, are justified by the white assumption that it must have been deserved. Before I continue, I want to speak to that. The affordability in housing when a white family moves out remains at a really good price compared to blacks, because the depreciation of houses and homes go down when black people move into them and when blacks move out of them. And the point of why I'm pointing this out is because they hold this stereotype that we can't take care of nothing, we're violent, someone's going to get shot, gang members, noise, parties, whatever it is you can name. And these are reasons and excuses that they have as to why they feel like they can't even really be in the same neighborhoods as us. Because there's this stereotype that, oh, I might lose my life. I don't want to hear too much noise at night. White parents may tell their kids, I want you back home by a certain time. I don't want you out late, whatever the case is. They will use stereotypes and have that fear, which isn't really justified at such a high rate, to say that because more than 30% of a particular neighborhood is black, well, clearly the cops must get called there more. They don't change their smoke battery detectors, another stereotype. They must have no fathers in the homes. I'm going to see a lot of mothers with their loud, rude-ass kids just moving and prancing all over the place. That's what's going through their minds when they're thinking of this and they're looking at neighborhoods and homes. It's not just the house, the land, the fence, whatever it is that surrounds the house. They're looking also at the fact that what percentage of this neighborhood has black people in it or people of color? They're going to look and do the research instead of, should probably be a good fit for my family, because they want to know who they're living around. But if they have a certain percentage where it's more black that are already living there, they won't move in. Shock says Spanish uses buffers between blacks and whites. Absolutely, I wouldn't deny that. I'll start again. Anti-black sentiment and how quickly images of brutality toward black children, let alone black adults, are justified by the white assumption that it must have been deserved. Such beliefs would be unimaginable if we had been shown images of white teens being thrown across schoolrooms, of white kindergartners handcuffed, and of a white child shot while playing with a toy gun in a park like Tamir Rice. Am I frozen? Oh, I am frozen. I am frozen.
Maybe A.
Okay, there we go. So lucky about that. Good to go. We're back. You're back. So in continuing, it says we see anti-black sentiment in the immediate rejoinder to Black Lives Matter that all lives matter, that blue lives matter, and the absurdly false comparison between the white nationalists and the alt-right movement now directly connected to the White House with the Black Panther Party of the 1960s. We see anti-blackness and how much more harshly we criticize blacks by every measure. So, Shalom, Francis, Shalom. And continuing about anti-blackness, and of course, this narrative that when you see a black person, all of you know the stereotype: lock your car doors, keep your kids away. Khan Lamont, all praises. Keep your kids away from them. She even brought up an example in the book. You know, a white woman was out with her daughter, and she said, "Mommy, look, a black person," and the man and everyone around just looked and shocked. And she said, "You're not supposed to say that, or don't say that. That's rude." You know, and didn't necessarily go into detail as to why. Like, these are examples that the author is speaking on and talking about with how early anti-blackness and racial prejudice develops within the psyches of white people and how it grows with them as they age. And this is why they have these developmental issues and these racial inequities that they are not properly able to address. So continuing, this is what I spoke to on the last class. It says anti-blackness is rooted in misinformation, fables, perversions, projections, and lies. It is also rooted in the lack of historical knowledge and an inability or an unwillingness to trace the effects of history into the present, another issue to have. But perhaps most fundamentally, anti-blackness comes from deep guilt about what white people have done and continue to do. The unbearable knowledge of our complicity with the profound torture of black people from past to present. While the full trauma of this torture in its various forms, both physically and psychologically, is only borne by African Americans, there is a moral trauma in it for the white collective. This quote here from an author, Ressa Menachem, refers to white supremacy as white body supremacy to argue that white supremacy is a form of trauma that is stored in our collective bodies, speaking on white people. She quotes and says, many African Americans know trauma intimately from their own nervous systems, but the experiences of people they love, and most often from both. But African Americans are not alone in this. A different but equally real form of racialized trauma lives in the bodies of most white Americans. Our projections allow us to bury this trauma by dehumanizing and then blaming the victim. If blacks are not the human in the same ways that we are as white people are human, our mistreatment of them doesn't count. We are not guilty. They are bad. It isn't unfair. In fact, it is righteous. So they give themselves their own out and their own loophole to escape having to take any racial accountability for what has happened and what has taken place from the centuries before of them sailing over here to the very present day. Here is the key point and key thing I wanted to highlight and roll out. She says, and continuing the author, there is a curious satisfaction in the punishment of black people. The smiling faces of the white crowd picnicking at lynchings in the past, and the satisfied approval of white people observing mass incarceration of white people observing mass incarceration and execution in the present. White righteousness, when inflicting pain on African Americans, is evident in the glee the white collective derives from the blackface and the depictions of blacks as apes and gorillas. We see it in the compassion toward white people who are addicted to opiates and call to provide them with the services versus the mandatory sentencing against those addicted to crack. And we know that those of you born in the 80s, maybe 70s, going into the 90s, whose communities these predominantly affected and by it, who was massively incarcerated and locked up. Says we see it in the concern about the forgotten white working class so critical to the outcome of the last presidential election, Trump, with no concern for blacks who remain on the bottom of every virtually social and economic measure. As Coates points out, toiling blacks are in their proper state. Toiling whites raise the specter of white slavery. To put it bluntly, I believe that the white collective fundamentally hates blackness for what it reminds white people of, that we are capable and guilty of perpetuating immeasurable harm, and that our gains come through the subjugation of others. We have a particular hatred for uppity blacks, those who dare to step out of their place and look us in the eye as equals. And if any of you know, during the Jim Crow, the lynching era, not treating white men, saying sir, ma'am, getting off the sidewalk, certain things like that, this is what they're speaking towards. If they're here and you try to meet them here, they do not like this and do not like to see you in places of positions of power and authority. It's what gets them upset, and they do not like what's deemed as black excellence. These messages that circulate relentlessly across the generations reinforce the white belief that blacks are inherently undeserving, which is a frankly outrageous belief given the state-sanctioned robbery of their labor. We have heard this message in the narrative of welfare cheats and welfare queens in the Reagan era. Propaganda again. We see it today when commentators slam the National Football League players who kneel during the national anthem and exercise their right to protest police brutality as ungrateful, and when former Congressman Joe Walsh declares that Stevie Wonder is another ungrateful black multimillionaire. We see it when Robert Jeffress, Dallas evangelical pastor and advisor to the President of the United States, claims that NFL players who protest police brutality against African Americans should thank God that they don't have to worry about being shot in the head like they would be in North Korea. Carol Anderson, in her book White Rage, argues that the trigger for white rage inevitably is black advancement. It is the mere presence of black people that is the problem. Rather, it is the blackness with ambition, with drive, with purpose, with aspirations, and with demands for full and equal citizenship. It is the blackness that refuses to accept subjugation, to give up. She continues, the truth is that despite all this, a black male was elected president of the United States, the ultimate advancement and thus the ultimate affront. Perhaps not surprisingly, voting rights were severely curtailed. The federal government was shut down, and more than once, the office of the president was shockingly, openly, and publicly disrespected by other elected officials. She was speaking about Barack Obama. So, in what it is that I'm reading about in these particular chapters and what the author's covering and going over, it's important that we realize and understand what's up against us and what's at play. And what she's saying, what's at play and what's up against us is anti-blackness rooted in systemic racism, the racial hierarchy that is America that we live in, no matter how they want to slice it and divide it. And also on behalf of the fact that everyday blacks and people of color must battle against the system, and white people do not understand how unfair it is at every single angle, and every which way you look at it, they have to fight and battle to get on even on the lowest playing fields. And notice that the poorest states within the U.S. contain the most amount of blacks. Those that don't get proper health care and die from lack of health care are black people. Cancer and heart disease being the number 1 and 2 killers in the United States, leading deaths, are the most highest amongst black people. When COVID hit, and it came, ironically enough, all of you can look at who was attacked and affected the most, black people. So we have to understand that the anti-blackness and the conversation that needs to be had is the fact that this system is not only still being upheld, it's the fact that this system still exists. It just doesn't exist like how it did when they first sailed over here. It's still very much alive. It's still very much present. And by the scriptures, it's very much still evident, because Esau is the ending of the world. Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. When they sailed over here, that was the beginning. And with the slave trade, the beginning of their hierarchy and them establishing global dominance, subjugation, and control over the planet. And you're only able to do that if you subjugate and enslave the children of Israel. And because we know that, and because we understand that, we know who's in charge. And we know that with the ending of this rulership, Jacob will begin to flourish and will rule after after Esau's kingdom is put to an end. So what I wanted to point out and highlight, Rhea said anti-blackness is rooted in misinformation. It absolutely is. And that's what I'm going to dispel tonight, because it gets tiring of the narrative. Something that's also mentioned with sentencing, and when it comes to court cases and stuff like that, you know, they have the difference of between black and white. You know, for the white kid, he grew up troubled in a home. His parents weren't often really there. He just wishes that they loved him more. You know, he got into drugs because he was, you know, bullied, you know, and they made him feel bad and stuff like that. And he just wanted somebody to care about him, you know, so then he snapped one day and he just lost it. You know, he got on the wrong path. Your Honor, if you give him a second chance, he can turn his life around. You know, he's definitely able to become an upstanding citizen of the United States. See, we don't get that same sympathy, if you want to say, in the court. We don't get that same measure of grace that they do compared to what we do. Or excuse me, we don't get what they do compared to what things we do when the crimes we commit when we go before sentencing. I read something that said this justice system works perfectly like bleach. It works perfectly well for whites, but destroys colors. And that's exactly what it does, because bleach cleans and affects only white clothes, but destroys anything with color on it. Ironically enough, the sun itself was made for people of color, but the sun is racist towards white people because it eradicates and burns them in the sun. And the sunscreen they have to put on is artificial melanin in order to protect themselves. So they actually have to put on black or black skin, which would be sunscreen, to protect themselves from getting burnt in the sun. Sis Williams said, even at work. Absolutely, even at work. At every single point, you will feel and see the effects of slavery and how it's still very much alive. The system of slavery never ended, it just evolved. And what we have to understand about that is that the white man is still at the top. It doesn't matter who's second, third, or fourth, fifth, whoever. As long as we are underneath and predominantly you see us working, that's still the system of slavery. You may see one of your own kind or someone else that's second, third, or in command. Or even if you do see one that's in power pertaining to our own, he answers to Esau. It doesn't matter. So I want to say that no matter where you go and how you look at it, you'll see the racial system playing every which way possible. And what we have to understand is that with the prior class, we know who the most criminals are by the arrest record. We know who makes up the highest percentages of crime according to the FBI database tables. And we know that every time that everything I brought out within that table, I'm thinking about it. Esau has always, whites have numbered at the top of the highest arrest record rate going back to 2010. And I'm very shocked that 1985, when Microsoft Excel, the tables, if you guys know, I'm sure you guys used Microsoft before, they didn't explain or bother going into the fact that probably even before 2010, if they pulled up the arrest records, whites still would have been leading in every arrest record possible, arrest record table possible, excuse me. And to understand and to see that we're the ones that take the short end of the stick for particular crimes and things at play, it really speaks to how powerful the media can really paint and put a narrative about us compared to anybody else. So Matter of fact, have any of you heard the case with that 18-year-old white kid in Oklahoma? Sadistically raped and choked out those girls he was apparently dating. I don't know his name, but I remember his face and I saw the video of it. And his mother was trying to protect him from getting arrested. And I've seen white people and white media covering it and talking about it and waking up to realize how disgusting this crime was. Conscious, Izar. And the thing about that is that how are you guys just now noticing a behavior and pattern in what he did to those girls today in 2025? But every single week, some nasty, decrepit white man, whether it be a police officer, firefighter, some of Trump's aides and best friends that he's taking pictures with, are all being arrested for child pornography charges. It's like all of a sudden it took this case and what he did to those girls for white people to wake up and realize this is disgusting. Did any of you know child marriage is still legal in 34 states? And the worst part is, since Isaiah said it's on video and his mother heard the girl scream. You know, it's interesting. I'm actually going to highlight that. Since Isaiah said his mother heard the girl scream, do you know why the mother didn't do anything? This is what I can't wait to get into before we continue with the lesson. The reason why his mother didn't do anything is because white women during slavery did absolutely nothing to protect the male slaves, or predominantly the female slaves, when they were being raped on the plantations or in the house or wherever it was. And they were silent and said absolutely nothing and left them completely defenseless. They said nothing when over 4,000 blacks during the Jim Crow era, predominantly men, were being lynched for false accusations of rape of white women. So they've not only said nothing for quite a long time, they complicitly played the part. So his mother hearing the girl scream and not doing anything shouldn't surprise anybody. But you know what white people have to understand? Columbus sailed here back in August 1392. (1992) from 1492 is 500 years. This is just America, but this was predominantly in the Western Hemisphere that the British, French, and the Spanish and the colonial and slavery system existed when they sailed over here, fought one another. They took this island, they took that island, took this land, took that land, displaced the natives, rape, rob, pillage, enslaved, so on and so forth, right? They have to realize they've been doing this for over 500 years. The General Gawar and General Shermak had brought out Dr. Joy DeGruy and showed how genetics and everything that's happened to slaves during slavery is still evident and alive within them today, which is why black people do not like claustrophobic, close, tight spaces. There's a reason why we react the way we do with dogs. We were chained and enslaved on ships being tightly packed together, known as the tight pack method and the loose pack method. And then we were also sicked out by dogs if we ran away from the plantations. What has to be understood about that is that that's been ingrained within us for decades, if I may add, for centuries. When this behavior has been ingrained within you, you influence your genetics accordingly when you then make children. And not just when you make children, that genetic inherent trait passes down to them. So what am I going to say now? Is it genetically within white people that they want to go after anybody underneath the age of 18 to have sex? No, because your genetics are not written that way. Has it become as it's been since they sailed over here back in 1492 and 500 plus years later, being in 2025, that it was socially acceptable to sleep with children, to rape women, and to face almost little to no consequences for doing so? Yeah, it's been normal. This goes back to ancient Rome and ancient Greece. I remember when I was reading about Alexander the Great's father, Philip, the king of Macedon, and the author put inside the book that no one questioned him whether he had brought young boys, young girls, or his own soldiers into his bedchambers. You're married with a wife and you're bringing young boys, young girls, or your soldiers into your bedchambers. What are you doing? They've been doing this. So the problem that white people don't understand and realize, a behavior that white people have been practicing for the past 500 years is not going to die. There's a reason why human trafficking, more particularly within children, is a multi-billion-dollar business. The movie The Sound of Freedom goes into that because the main character of the movie that has to go out and find the little boy's sister has to infiltrate a network of pedophiles in order to find and get his sister back that was all the way in South America and Colombia. And what has to be understood about that is that's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's not just going to die out because they capitalize off of and use young children for child sacrifice. And not just that, they use them as sex slaves. If any of you had seen the Epstein files released and some of the information that was released, Trump apparently was performing fellatio on Bill Clinton, who's a known pedophile and who visited Epstein's Island many times during his presidency. This shouldn't surprise any of you. They've been doing this for centuries. White men have always been gay and very much polygamous, sleeping with not just their own wives and women. They've been sleeping with males, particularly slaves, if you want to put it inside the context of this nation, and particularly with each other and with young children, boys and girls of all ages. It doesn't matter. So what has to be understood is that white people are now just waking up to how sick this act was that this particular kid did. And it's like, you guys have been doing this for centuries. I'll leave off on this fact before I continue back into the lesson, right? To get into the main focal point. Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States, the author of the Constitution. He has black descendants that are very much alive to this day. And a lot of people don't know that. He has black descendants and white descendants. His white descendants come from his wife. His black descendants come from a 13-year-old girl that he took with him to France named Sally Hemings, who he began an active sexual relationship with while he was away in France as the ambassador to France from the United States. And him having sex with that 13-year-old girl, and yes, raping her, because slavery was legal, which also means pedophilia and having sex with underage girls, whatever white people consider underage, was also legal. And because white men were the dominant power structure in society, no one said anything. And it's baffling to see that everybody wants the Epstein files out to say and see that a president has been having sex with children and he's a sexual predator. But the guy that wrote the whole body of government that we now have to live and abide by was having sex with the 13-year-old girl. And the fact that he tried to hide it, even though he couldn't, and the fact that his black descendants are a living testimony to it, that doesn't baffle white people for some reason. Aliyah said inherently homosexuals. They are indeed. No, they're not homosexuals. They're omnisexuals because they do everything. They also lead in the highest rates of bestiality as well. They don't talk about that. So what needs to be understood, so we're back into the lesson, is to talk about who the real criminals are. And I'm glad people are speaking up about that because they're starting to realize, yeah, white people are kind of sick when they're doing the things that they're doing. Yeah, it's something you should have known since they sailed over here. Bartholomew de las Casas, in his book, The Destruction of the Indies, recorded all the deaths to the best of his ability. I really don't feel like it really amounted up to what the actual number was of all the natives that died wherever the Spaniards went. Enslavement, killing, mutilating, dismembering, sicking dogs, you name it. Everywhere they go. All right. With that being said, stated, I'm going to give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Now we're going to get into some jail statistics. Entire screen. Let's see. Okay. Give me a second. All right. Okay. All right. This is the first article. It says the gap between the number of blacks and whites in prison is shrinking. This was 6 years ago. Keep in mind of the 2019 FBI database table. It says blacks have long outnumbered whites in U.S. prisons, but a significant decline in the number of black prisoners has steadily narrowed the gap over the past decade, according to new data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. So if anyone asks, this is the federal government. Federal, meaning the people that are above state governments, recording and making these making this data, these claims, and giving out these numbers and statistics. Just in case anybody wants to argue, here's the ammunition. At the end of 2017, federal and state prisons in the United States held about 475,900 inmates who were black and 436,500 who were white, a difference of 39,400 according to BJS. I also want to highlight and point out when it came to murder on those tables and statistics, I forgot to mention to all of you, the number was higher, but I've already explained that because blacks make up the most highest exoneration rates, over 50% of the crimes that were arrested for. Again, showing why black men are released at the highest rates every single year for crimes they never committed. When it came to murder, black people are here, but white people are literally right here, but right behind us. This is blacks, but this is whites. They're literally, we're neck and neck, literally. There's almost no difference because they commit over 45% of the murder rate. Commit 45% and up of murders, and murder just not as much, and if not more than black people do. So that's clear. 10 years earlier, there were 592,900 black and 499,800 white prisoners, a difference of 93,100 prisoners. This analysis counts only inmates sentenced to more than a year. The decline in the black and white gap between 2007 and 2017 was driven by a 20% decrease in the number of black inmates, which outpaced a 13% decrease in the number of white inmates. Oh, I wonder why. You know why? Because we're released at the highest rates possible compared to the fact that when we're arrested, we're charged more and sentenced to longer sentences for crimes that we're more than likely innocent of. The gap between white and Hispanic imprisonment also narrowed between 2007 and 2017, but not because of a decrease in Hispanic prisoners. Instead, the number of white prisoners fell while the same number of Hispanic inmates increased slightly. At the end of 2017, there were 100 more white inmates than Hispanic inmates, 436,500 versus 336,500, down from an inmate difference of 169,400 in 2007. Overall, there were 1,439,808 sentenced prisoners in the U.S. at the end of 2017, or about 6% fewer than the 1,532,851 at the end of 2007. Apart from blacks, whites, and Hispanics, these totals include inmates from other races and those from mixed racial and ethnic backgrounds. The figures only count people in federal and state correctional facilities, including those held in privately run prisons that contract with the government. They exclude most inmates held in locally run jails. I can't wait to actually get into that. Held in privately run prisons that contract with the government. That is very important. The racial and ethnic makeup of U.S. prisons continues to look substantially different from the demographics of the country as a whole. In 2017, this was 8 years ago, blacks represented 12% of the U.S. adult population, but 33% of the sentenced prison population. Whites accounted for 64% of the adults, but 30% of the prisoners. And while Hispanics represented 16% of the adult population, they accounted for 23% of the inmates. There you go. You got Judah and you got Joseph. Judah, Joseph. That's our names. That's our names today. So you see 16%, 23%. You see 12, 33%. And then you see white outnumbering both in population, but still making up 30%. They are not that far off in crime. I want to emphasize that. Look, they are not that far off in crime. 3% difference, 7% difference from Hispanic. More than Hispanic, but literally right behind black. Literally. And this is 2017, so this is 8 years ago. So we already know who had the highest number of arrests and why blacks are more locked up than everybody else. Okay. Another way of considering racial and ethnic differences in the nation's prison population is by looking at the imprisonment rate, which tallies the number of prisoners per 100,000 people. In 2017, there were 1,549 black prisoners for every 100,000 black adults, nearly 6 times the imprisonment rate for whites, 272 per 100,000, and nearly double the rate for Hispanics, 823 per 100,000. For all three of these groups, imprisonment rates have declined substantially since 2007. The rate has declined 31% amongst blacks, 14% amongst whites, and 25% amongst Hispanics. Wow. Experts had offered a huge range of explanations for the pronounced drop in the black imprisonment rate. Why? Again, because black people are exonerated at the most highest rates possible because they are found innocent and exonerated of crimes that they were falsely accused of. Cops plant evidence, they frame them, and may I remind you of a deep historical racist practice of false confessions where they tortured black men into making false confessions and committing and confessing the crimes they never committed. This is just the tip of the iceberg with these. Jail inmates in 2022 statistical tables. This is from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. This is from the federal government. This was also mentioned inside this article here. At the top, according to BJS, that's the Bureau of Justice Statistics. So they have the numbers just in case anybody wants to ask. Description. This report is the 36th in the series that began in 1982. It describes the number of persons held in local jails. Held in local jails, jail incarceration rates, inmate demographics, conviction status in the most serious offense, number of admissions to jail, jail capacity, inmate turnover rates, and staff employed in local jails. Here are the highlights. At mid-year 2022, local jails held 663,100 persons in custody, 4% more than the year before. Local jails held 92,900 females at mid-year 2022, accounting for 14% of the jail inmate population. From 2021 to 2022, the number of females in jail increased by 9%, while the numbers of males increased by 3%. From 2012 to 2022, the number of persons aged 17 or younger in jail decreased from 5,400 to 1,900, averaging a 10% decline per year. The racial and ethnic composition of the jail population remained stable from 2021 to 2022. Let's have a look. At mid-year 2022, this was the year the pandemic ended. Everything kind of died down. About 48% of all persons held in jail were white. They were white. 35% were black, and 14% were Hispanic. Well, didn't the FBI database table we looked at prove this already? Look at who leads in the prison population. Isn't this something? 48% of all persons held in jail were white. Did we not look at the arrest record from 1985, spanning over 40 years into today, being 2025, to see that white people made up 284 million arrests on record and have been arrested more for crimes, outnumbering black people by at least more than half? Look, it says in 35% were black and 14% were Hispanic. American Indian or Alaska Native persons, Asia persons or Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander persons, and persons of two or more races together accounted for 3% of the total jail population. Date published December 14, 2023. This was roughly 2 years ago going on. So what does this help to show? That we're not the criminals. What does this help to show? The sister Rhea put in earlier in the chat, anti-blackness is misinformation. Because according to this information, may I remind all of you, this is the Bureau of Justice Statistics. This is the federal government. 48% of all persons held in jail were white. Not black, white. We are not the criminals that they make us out to be. Oh, man. This is also from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Again, more government data. Let's have a nice deep look at this. Inmate race. Statistics are updated weekly. Last updated on Saturday, September 27, 2025. It is November 14, 2025. So almost 2 months ago, they released statistics about who the most locked up individuals are by race are. Let's have a look. Well. White, black, Native American, and this is Asian. So race, you have the four here. Asian, number of inmates, 2,474. Percentage of inmates, 1.6. Black, 59,274. 38.3%. Okay. Native American, 4,690. That's 3.0%. Would you look at here? White people, 88,494. 57.1%. Inmate race statistics are updated weekly. This was updated almost going on again 2 months ago. Look at this. This is from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. This is from the federal government. Again, if there's questions or verification of proof anyone needs. Look at who takes up most of this circle pertaining to the number of inmates locked up and people locked up behind bars. Black people definitely come in second place, but we don't take first. White people do. 88,000, they make up more than half of the prison population, according to the federal government statistics. While black people don't even make up, black people make up roughly more than a third. They make up more than half, which is why they have the biggest percentage on this chart right here. And then Native American and then Asian. Look at this. What more proof do you guys need? And what can be provided to show and see that we're not the criminals that they make us out to be? Again, going back to the stereotypes about, lock your doors and, make sure your kids are safe. Don't let anything happen to them. I don't want any black people around my children or my home. I don't want my daughter dating a black guy, whatever it is, so on and so forth. And yet this here shows and proves that white people are majority, more than half of the prison population compared to black people. All right. Last article before we get into some pictures. This is the 2023 demographic differences in federal sentencing. Sentencing differences continue to exist across demographic groups, of course, When examining all sentences imposed during the 5-year study period from 2017 to 2021, these disparities were observed across demographic groups, both among males and females. Of course, let's have a look. Usual stereotype. Specifically, black males received 13.4% longer sentences, and Hispanic males received 11.2% longer than white males. Hispanic females received 27.8% longer than white females, while other race females received 10% shorter sentences. So look at this. Longer sentences, black male, 13.4%, as I said, 11.2%, and other males being non-white, or excuse me, non-Hispanic or non-black. This would be Native American, Pacific Islander, Hawaiian, whatever it is, 3.7%. While white males, being the reference group, they just received a regular sentence or would possibly receive probation or lighter sentences compared to their black and Hispanic counterparts. The sentencing differences in the data the commission examined largely can be attributed to the initial decision of whether the sentence should include incarceration at all, rather than to the length of the prison term once a decision to impose one has been made. In particular, the likelihood of receiving a probationary sentence varied substantially by gender and race. Black males were 23.4% less likely, and Hispanic males were 26.6% likely to receive a probationary sentence compared to white males. Similar trends were observed among females, with black and Hispanic females less likely to receive a probation sentence than white females, 11.2%, Hispanic 29.7%, less likely respectively. Look at this. Hispanic males, black males, other males. White people, again, are the reference group, but look how we're not even at the more likely percentage across this reference group on this table. The sentencing differences were less pronounced when the analysis focused solely on the cases in which a sentence of imprisonment was imposed, which comprised 94% of all cases during the 5-year study period. Focusing solely on these cases, black males received lengths of incarceration 4.7% longer, and Hispanic male received lengths of incarceration 1.9% longer than white males. There was a little difference among females receiving a sentence of imprisonment. The only statistically significant difference in the length of imprisonment among females was among Hispanic females, who received lengths of incarceration 5.9% shorter than white females. Differences in the length of imprisonment across demographic groups were concentrated among individuals who received relatively short sentences. Among individuals sentenced to 18 months or less incarceration, black males received lengths of incarceration 6.8% longer than white males. The difference narrowed to the 1.3% for individuals who received sentences of greater than 18 months to 60 months. But for sentences longer than 60 months, black males received the lengths of incarceration completely 1% shorter than white males. Few differences were statistically significant when comparing sentences for white males. When examining all sentences imposed, females received sentences 29.2% shorter than males. Females of all races were 39.9% more likely to receive probation sentences than males. When examining only sentences of incarceration, females received lengths of incarceration 11.3% shorter than males. Again, this is from the United States Sentencing Commission. That is also in work with the federal government. So again, to note on this, and again, to talk about this, it's important for us to understand we are looked at more as the criminals. We are looked at as more as the ones that are responsible for crime. We are the ones that are more, at the helm. Salakia, that receive what the saying goes as the short end of the stick. And it's important for us to understand this because when it comes to sentencing, we don't receive the same sentences based off the graphics of skin color. Again, this is what the author was speaking to in the book. The author had stated and said that white males or white people will generally, he needs compassion. He needs to be understood. things of that nature pertaining to their behavior and their upbringing and how they grew up. Versus us, it's like, no, you had your choice, you made your choice. We don't really care why you did what you did or committed to the choices that you did. We just know you're a criminal and you decided to start doing what you were doing, where we're going to have to put you away. Black people do not get that same level of compassion that whites do. And because we don't, this is why we're sentenced at higher rates than whites. And that has to be understood because they just think that we're outright, wanting to commit these crimes because we come out the womb and we have a gun in our hand, and that's not the case, right? All right, so lastly, prison and jails versus colleges. College are educational institutions, along with the universities. These are all the states that have colleges being blue, more colleges than prisons, and then you have more prisons than colleges. California, Arizona, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine all have more colleges than prisons. And Hawaii. Hawaii is right beneath Texas there. Every single other state that's covered in red have more prisons than colleges, which shows and proves how this nation is built off of slave labor and the backs of people, predominantly speaking, that is black people and Hispanic people. This is crazy, just looking at this. And yes, so most of you guys know Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas, and also Louisiana, of course, Texas as well. All of these states predominantly hold the bulk of black people. From Virginia on down to Florida, going all the way west towards Texas. Not that any other state doesn't, but that's the primary bulk of where black people are at. And of course, it should be evident and obvious. There's a reason there's more prisons than colleges in those particular states, to call out those states particularly. But the blue states, which, how many states is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 states have more colleges than prisons. And the other 36 states all have more prisons than colleges. So the prison to college ratio is literally more than 2/3 compared to the 1/3. So 1/3 of states literally have more colleges than prisons, but 2/3 of states have more prisons than colleges, and it's predominantly where black people live and are associated with and are at. That is crazy. That is crazy. Okay. Next picture. All right. From figure number 11, this is from 2023. This is going into the articles earlier. Black men spent longer in jail than white men, while women generally had similar lengths of stay. Average days in jail by sex, race, county from 2019. Orange is black, blue is white, gray is Hispanic, and then they separate it categorically by men and women. Okay, I can't zoom in on this. All right, so hopefully that is legible. Oh wait, there we go. So here you have men and women in Durham, North Carolina. We got brothers down there. You have Louisville, Kentucky, and then you have St. Louis, Missouri. So there's 23 black men on average per 1,000 adult residents for black, 20 for white, and 18 for Hispanic. Louisville, Kentucky, which is definitely heavily racist and prejudiced state, has 42 men that are 42 black men, for every 1,000 adult residents, then 28 white, 24 Hispanic. And then you have 33 in St. Louis, Missouri, and 19 within white. So 33 black, 19 white, and then 14 black, 12 white for women. Hispanic isn't there because the Northern Kingdom is not predominantly in those country areas and states. All right, and last one. Racial disparities in men's prison incarceration rates in 2022. Again, this is the same year for the end of the pandemic. The number of men incarcerated in federal and state prisons per 100,000 population in each category. Of course, blacks in the lead. Or I don't know what other is unless it's pertaining to other race. Black is in the lead with 1,826. American Indian. It's actually surprising. American Indian or Alaskan Native, 1,443. You have Hispanic at 794, and then you have white at 337, 141 at Asian. This is the total men's prison incarceration rate, 606,000 per 100,000. This was 3 years ago from 2022. Three years ago from 2022. All right. So I promised my next class, because that concludes this here. My next class, we will be going into Esau and his crimes. We need to talk about it. Can't wait. It definitely may be extensive. I'm actually going to ask all of you now to please forbear what's going to come out, because the barbaric, heinous, and abominable things that Esau does cannot be comprehended by our minds, because we are on the opposite hand of what Esau is and what he embodies. So the patience and the long suffering that all of you are going to need for that lesson is going to very much be required, because a lot of you, even myself included, are not going to be able to understand why Esau does the things that he does, and more particularly and importantly, what he gets out of it. So that concludes lesson 2 of this series, Crime and Criminals. And for the next one, again, we're going to be going into Esau's crimes before we dig back historically into the foundation of prisons and jails within this nation, and how, again, we are the ones that take the short end of the stick pertaining to prison labor, mass incarceration, so on and so forth. You know, we can say it, but at this present time, we need to be able to defend ourselves, because this narrative that all we're good for is violence, rap, and just being able to be athletes is very annoying, and it's very much bothersome, because it's not all we are as people. Yes, we're the greatest athletes, so on and so forth. We have amazing intellectual ability as well. And it's not shared enough, and it's not spoken about enough. But when it comes to welfare and black fatigue and look what black people are doing, that's more highlighted and put in the spotlight, because we're made to be a laughingstock compared to the things we actually are great and capable of doing. Especially, you know, you see young black teenagers, you know, some that have risked their lives to save people that were drowning, some that, you know, mow lawns for charity and work, some that make food and lemonade stands and sell them to the public. Like, it's not spoken about and talked about enough, the good things that we actually do as a people. And I'm speaking that as a whole, because we really need to be able to understand we have to dispel and destroy the narrative, because we, being a representation of God's people, we are a representation of God's image. We are not the lowly beast-like other hand side of what the Most High made us to be. We are in the image of righteousness, of purity and perfection, and that's what we're supposed to uphold. And what these classes are doing, and what I hope they're doing for all of you, is dispelling the narrative about who the real criminals are and what's actually going on pertaining to crime and statistics, because we need to discuss and talk about these things, because we need the ammunition and fuel for when we go out there. Whether it be we're speaking to our own people, and yes, all of you do need to be speaking to the Gentiles, predominantly Esau, that is, because they need to know and be aware of it. The gospel also pertains to them, because someone's going to be slaves and servants that we will possess in the kingdom of heaven. Yes, the gospel is for them in that manner, in a sense. They're not going to be our equals. They will be our subjects, servants, and slaves. We built this kingdom. We're not building the one to come if we are of that hopeful elect. They will be. So please inform them, not just of their sentence to come within the kingdom, but inform them of these facts and information, because it needs to be okay. There we go. But nevertheless, I'm bringing this all out so that all of you have the ammunition and are much more aware and not ignorant to the things we need to be discussing and talking about. To bring up Charlie Kirk, the one thing he did do, he went around debating and talking with students, universities, whoever it was. We're supposed to be doing that in our own manner, but the Israelite way, and in a woke way where we are informed and we are able to present information, facts and statistical data, as I'm doing now, and we're doing it in a manner that's keeping people enlightened and informed about what's really going on. And again, that's why I brought up the case earlier with that white kid. The next time this class, with the third part of this class, we're going to go into Esau's crimes, because white people are not entirely aware of what goes on in their own communities and things that they're doing. And something egregious like this case has to happen for white people to realize this is disgusting, and this judge just let him off. Well, you've been practicing pedophilia and sleeping with underage boys and girls for over 500 years now. Why are y'all just not complaining about an issue you've been committing and doing for centuries? That doesn't make sense. So the point of it is that we need to keep ourselves aware, informed, and be on the side of intelligence with this agenda that's at play and the propaganda that's at play to depict us as stupid, silly, shucking and jiving, good for nothing, so on and so forth, whatever it is with these stereotypes that they've labeled us and put to us for centuries. And again, it is between black and white, but to our brothers of the northern and sisters of the northern kingdom and to the other tribes, where Judah goes, because Judah is the head, the tribes make up the rest of the body. So please believe that as I'm saying, black, Hispanic, and Native American and Latino follow right behind us. We're one family. Ezekiel 37 talks about the joining of the two families to become one stick. So as we are one stick, and again, this is between black and white, Hispanic and Native American follow right behind us. We're one family. If one got his ass whooped, we're all getting our asses whooped. That's the God we serve. Absolutely, Sis Izar, all praises. I'm glad. Trying to just present things in a more proficient and professional way. Connie wanted public execution, and he led by example. Philemon, shalom, good sir, shalom. And again, with that being said, just pay attention, to what is being particularly said and documented about us. You'll see black fatigue, you'll see welfare, food stamps, whatever it is. You just pay attention, because how they like to ascribe this to us is that it's just us and it's just a black thing. And that's not the case. Like, these racial stereotypes and negatives that I'm getting sick and tired of are seriously annoying. It's not just us. We're not the crimes and the barbarians that are running and going all around the society. And the president of this nation, who's a white man himself, literally got outed for giving Bill Clinton fellatio in the emails that are being released. So who's really sick here if you really want to have that conversation? And again, that's why I'm reading this book with the certain pages in it, White Fragility again, why it's hard for white people to talk about racism, because these are confronting and uncomfortable conversations we need to have with them. And it's not just educating them on racism, it's educating them on their race in general as well. It can go beyond racism and honestly doesn't even have to go there. Before you talk about black people this and black people that, you should pay attention to the pedophiles and sexual predators and the disgusting, heinous creeps and freaks you have inside your own communities. Before you look at us, you should look inwardly. Take the mote out your own eye first, as Christ said, and then you look at everybody else, compared to looking outward and being a hypocrite, and then you want to look inward. That's not how this works. They can't even agree between the two parties created by them, but we're to blame. It's a joke. It absolutely is a joke. And again, with what you see happening within the government and these Epstein files, we don't have anything to do with this. Epstein, Clinton, Trump, Prince Andrew, those aren't black people. Those are all white men. We have nothing to do with this. Sit back, because this is a conversation and a dispute to be had out amongst the white people. Just sit back and don't say nothing, because we have nothing to do with this. Sexual predation and going after to seek sexual intercourse with children is not a black and Hispanic thing. Yes, we rob. Yes, we're gang members. Yes, we can be violent, but we don't have a culture where sex with children and intercourse with adolescents and teenagers and young adults is our culture. That's not us. It's not. So again, with this next class that will definitely heavily be extensive, we will be going into Esau's crimes and taking a peek at his communities about the things that go on and take place. We definitely will be. Fresh off the press, news related and released sources, and the things that white people do that we need to put a spotlight on and what we need to talk about. Because again, enough about black fatigue, enough about black people this and black people that. I just showed all of you the table where it says that they literally make up over half the prison population, according to the Federal Bureau of Statistics. I can assure all of you, yes, we're criminals and we commit crime. We're just not the biggest ones doing it. Any questions, comments, concerns anyone has? Again, I'm going to continue this series, but the next time we're definitely going into Esau. Ayan Debar, Sis Azalea. Sis, I'd very much pay attention to what goes on in your state because you're in Kentucky. And I definitely know the racism out there is that old country white prejudice spirit did not die out. Philmon asks, is there any camps in Texas? Absolutely there is. We have the good brother Yashar out there. Sister Panyan, Sister Zamaya, we definitely do. I would say, Apaya, could you reach out to the brother Baba Kosha and make sure that he is able to have company amongst brethren and be able to reach out and connect. Thanks for the breakdown, especially sides. Ayan Debar Yatab. Again, we need to be informed. And we definitely need to be more educated with what goes on and be aware of what's, occurring in the news. We're supposed to be watchmen, but, as we pay attention to what goes on around the world, we need to pay attention to what goes on in our communities. I don't like that. Well, not all of them are Israelites, but there's definitely a remnant. And tracing back the lineage, tracing back the history, I'm not going to deny and not say that they aren't, but I'm not going to say that they are either. It's definitely a mix, but there's definitely Israelite remnants among them. You can't just say the whole of them aren't Philmon. So don't worry about that. Apayak, if you could, Baba Kashar, reach out to the brother and get him the company that he needs with the camp we have in Texas. Since I was say you're not lying at all. Sundown Town still rampant out here. That's wild. That's actually wild. That is crazy. And you can see, you know, the racial hierarchy with what the author was talking about never died. You know, so it never went away. It's still very much present. That's the point of this, is that from back then and sailing and Jim Crow and lynching, Reconstruction era after the Civil War, like a lot of it never died. It was just reinvented and it just still exists, but in a non-way that is in a way that is not overt to where it's actually deemed, hey, you can't be doing this. And definitely cops and authorities in the government won't be questioning it either. I know a lot of Igbos are celebrating. That's exactly the point. You know, they can be Israel, but still fall on the way to those particular customs and things. But, you know, even if they're heathen, you know, if the spirit resonates and they feel it, they see it, they're able to believe it, let them receive it. Philmon. All right. With that being said, I'm going to close out this class. I'm Madyum Apanyam Akwadum, rise and face the east. This is Psalm chapter 76. In Judah is God known, his name is great in Israel. And Salem also is his tabernacle and his dwelling place in Zion. There break ye the arrows of the bow, the shield and the sword in the battle. Thou art more glorious and excellent than the mountains of prey. The stout-hearted are spoiled, they have slept their sleep, and none of the men of might have found their hands. At thy rebuke, O God of Jacob, both the chariot and horse are cast into a dead sleep. Thou, even thou, art to be feared, and who may stand in thy sight when thou once art angry? Thou didst cause judgment to be heard from heaven, and the earth feared, it was still. When God arose to judgment to save all the meek of the earth, surely the wrath of man shall praise thee, the remainder of wrath shalt thou restrain. Vow and pay unto the Lord your God. Let all that be round about him bring presents unto him that ought to be feared. He shall cut off the spirit of the princes. He is terrible to the kings of the earth. In the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahawashi, the water from Yad, Amen.
Imagine Shabbat. Imagine Barak. Yahweh Hashem Yahawashi Barakatam.
Yahweh Hashem Yahawashi Barakatam. All right, family. Shalom, shalom. La ilaha tawab.